Hi everyone, Chris Murray of Elevation Wheel Company here. I wanted to go over some tips that may help you guys out in getting your first job in a bike shop and then also keeping it. These are all things that would have been good for me to know. Made a lot of mistakes over the years, so hopefully I can help you out in getting into this industry. Well, let's get to it. All right, one thing I found that definitely helps is have a regular presence in the bike shop. Even if you're not buying a ton, buy little things from the shops you want to work at. Chain lube, tubes, whatever it may be. Basically enough so they recognize your face, and always have a good attitude when you go in there, always be enthusiastic, always act professional when you're talking to them. Yeah, basically you want them to recognize you and know that you're not going to be a pain to deal with. Admittedly, a lot of bike shops base who they're hiring on personality types they like as much or more than their actual skill set. So you don't want them to think you're going to be a pain to work with, not fun, always just kind of drama filled. Nobody wants to deal with that. So even if you have all the skills in the world, if they don't like your personality, they probably won't hire you. So always go into the shops you're curious about with really good attitude. Ask them questions. Hey, how do you get into the industry? Drop off a resume. Hey, if you guys ever have an opening, but never be super pressuring with that. Nobody likes somebody who's super pushy or super needy. But yeah, you definitely want them to recognize your face, because it's really difficult to get into the shops if you don't know somebody. Another thing you can do that will help you out with getting into a shop is offer to volunteer a night a week or a few hours a week. Depending on how busy they are, they may or may not go for that. So typically offer it more in like the slower months, because a lot of times when it's busy in the middle of summer, you just don't have the time to train people like you could in the winter time. When it's super busy in the middle of summer, all you can do is keep up. The last thing you want to do is have to train somebody in the middle of that, because a lot of times when you're new, you cost them more time than you save them, especially if, you're very fresh. So if you reach out in the wintertime when things are slow, hey, can I hang out for a few hours, maybe learn something, help you guys out, and then offer to do the crap jobs nobody wants to, like help clean up around the shop, mop floors, clean bathrooms, stuff like that. Basically just be useful to them, and that will always help you out. One other thing that will help make things go a lot smoother once you land the job is read and watch as much as you can to learn about being a bike mechanic. You want to have a good base understanding of everything you can, even if you don't have any first-hand experience with it. So watch a ton of YouTubes on how to adjust derailleurs, bleed brakes, whatever it may be you're looking at. Just watch and try to digest as much information as you possibly can. That will make the learning curve a little less steep. You can watch all the videos in the world and still not be proficient with it, but at least you have a good basic understanding of why you're doing what you are and what the theory is behind what you're doing. It'll take time to really fine-tune those skills, but having a good base understanding is really a great starting point. Having a good understanding of the basic systems you're working on will definitely save you from asking some pretty basic questions that realistically you should already know. It's normal to not have experience in this stuff, but you at least want to understand the basic concepts of what you're working on and what you should be learning how to do. Asking questions is always fine, but there's some basic stuff you should have done your homework on before you've applied for the job, let alone landed the job. So definitely do your research. With YouTube and all the other resources out there, not knowing some basic stuff is just not an excuse. The info's there. You should definitely do the homework to figure it out. On that note, asking questions it's a good thing. You just don't want to have to ask, how do I change a tube? But if you get into a project, you think you understand it, but you get to a point where you're kind of confused, don't force your way through something. Don't hammer something when it takes finesse. Basically just be willing to ask questions before you break something. That applies to both asking coworkers for advice if you're stuck, or when you're talking to a customer if you don't know something. Be willing to tell the customer, hey, I don't know, but let me find out. I've never had a customer that was offended by that. Most of them appreciate you not trying to bullshit them, because most customers, when they walk into the bike shop, have been researching what they're already asking you questions about, so they've got a pretty good understanding on what you're going to say or should say. So don't bullshit them, because they'll probably realize you're full of shit. But yeah, be willing to ask questions, but try to have a good basic understanding before you get into it. So yeah, I know this sounds contradicting, but don't be afraid to ask questions. Asking questions are good. Admitting you don't know something is a good thing, because people don't like somebody that's trying to make stuff up on the spot. But also make sure you've done enough research that it shows that you actually care and have made an effort on your own to figure this stuff out before you go and use up somebody else's time to answer some basic stuff you should have figured out on your own already, or you can type into Google and have an answer for in 12 seconds. So yeah, it's a balance there for sure, but it all comes back to making sure you've put in the time and effort yourself to at least make a good attempt at learning the material that you should know, learning the basics of what you're working on, and then you kind of build from there. When it comes to applying to different shops, you do have to have realistic expectations on your skill set versus the shop's needs. Don't expect a job in a bike shop in the middle of winter. It can happen, but it's not very likely. You'll probably have to apply to just about every shop out there in your area and hope one of them will go for it. Some shops have more bandwidth to take on new employees than others. Like my shop's very small. We all have to kind of do everything, and there's not a lot of time to teach a whole lot, especially when it's in the middle of the busy season. But a lot of times bigger shops or higher volume shops, especially shops that do a lot of retail sales still, they can usually afford to have some new employees that are still learning, that just start with like basic tune-ups, cleaning bikes, tune-ups, building bikes, washing bikes, stuff like that. Stuff that gets you a good basic understanding of everything, and then you kind of work your way up from there. But yeah, the bigger shops will have more bandwidth typically to take on fresh help. Smaller shops, don't be surprised if they're not interested, just because a lot of times if it's a 1 or 2 or 3 man shop, you don't have the time to train somebody, especially when things get really, really busy. Bigger shops, they have a lot more need for simpler tasks, so those are usually a really good starting point. Sometimes you can even get lucky depending on where you're at, and check out bike co-ops and nonprofit groups. Like here in Colorado Springs, we've got Kids on Bikes, and they do rent-a-stand nights, repair help nights, but nights where it's just show up and fix a bunch of bikes that they go and sell and help fund their programming. But some great nonprofits like that give you a lot of opportunity to learn, and that gets you a really good baseline. Tuning up really cheap bikes will make you a great mechanic. A lot of times the rusted out 20-year-old entry-level mountain bike that you have to tune up is going to take way more skill than it will be to build like a new $3,000 or $4,000 mountain bike. You have to get a lot more creative. You have to think a little bit more about it. On a lot of the newer higher end stuff, it's a lot more intuitive and things just naturally work better. So it sounds contradicting, but a lot of times it's actually easier to make a high-end bike work the way it should than it is to make an old beat-up bike work. The older bikes, you have to get a little creative and think mechanically a little bit more, especially new bike that's barely been ridden, or building a new bike versus like an old beat-up, really well abused bike. So if you've got a nonprofit in the area, or even just start, or a co-op, or even start your own, anything you can do to get hands-on time with wrenches, that'll always help you out. Basically, this stuff, it's not terribly complex, but a lot of it does take a fair bit of finesse to make it work really well. So the more time you spend doing it, the better, because a lot of this stuff you can't learn or you can't get proficient at by just watching videos. It's good to get the concept on the videos, and then you just have to spend time kind of fine tuning your skills and developing that touch to make it work really well. Well, the sun just came over the tree, so now everything is all washed out. But yeah, I think that gets a good baseline on things that can help you out in getting started in a bike shop. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you found this helpful, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and I'll try to bring more content like this your way. And also, if you'd like videos on any specific topics, let me know, and I will do my best to make that happen. But yeah, I appreciate you guys watching, and good luck out there.